Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live in the shadow of someone the world adores? Someone whose every smile is plastered across magazines, whose every word is dissected by millions. You think you know them. You see them on the red carpet, at charity events, laughing with the cameras flashing. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You imagine warmth, grace, charm. You imagine someone who could never raise their voice, someone who could never make the people closest to them tremble. But what if all of that was a carefully constructed mask? What if behind the perfectly styled hair, the polished smile, and the seemingly effortless poise, there was something darker, something controlling, manipulative, even cruel? That's exactly what Meghan Markle's former maid claims she experienced every single day. Behind the walls of the palace, and behind the doors that the public never sees. It starts innocently enough. The first day, she was welcoming, polite, charming even. A smile that seemed genuine. A voice that was soft but confident. You might think, who wouldn't want to work for someone so poised, so elegant? But as the maid would later discover, appearances can be dangerously deceiving. Within hours, subtle red flags emerged. Instructions that seemed small at first. A certain way to fold a handkerchief, a specific arrangement of flowers. But gradually, the demands became stricter, the tone sharper, and the consequences for mistakes increasingly tense. It wasn't just about perfection. It was about control. And those who worked there quickly realized that any slip could make them a target of the person they were supposed to serve. The maid, whose name we'll protect, recalls the first incident that made her truly understand the environment she had entered. It was a simple request, something almost laughable, and yet it sparked a reaction that was anything but normal. A misplaced item, a wrong tone of voice, a question asked too boldly. Any of these could ignite what she describes as storms of rage. And it wasn't the kind of anger that disappears quickly. It lingered, it burned, it left an impression on everyone who witnessed it. The house itself, despite its beauty and grandeur, felt smaller and smaller, suffocating under the weight of tension. Staff learned quickly. Mistakes weren't just mistakes. They were opportunities to be humiliated, scolded, or ignored in ways that left you questioning your own reality. And yet, the public only saw the smiling figure in glamorous outfits, attending events, meeting world leaders, or laughing at charity galas. The contrast between public persona and private reality was staggering. What makes this story even more compelling, even more urgent to hear, is that insiders rarely speak out. The royal world is designed to be impermeable. Staff are expected to be loyal, discreet, invisible. And yet, for the first time, this maid has decided to break that silence. She paints a picture of a household controlled not just by rules, but by fear. She tells of moments that would make even the most seasoned palace staffers raise their eyebrows. She speaks of manipulation so subtle that it almost goes unnoticed, and so sharp that it cuts through the loyalty of those who thought they understood what it meant to serve. There were demands that seemed unreasonable, punishments that seemed disproportionate, and an expectation that every action, every word, every gesture aligned with the whims of the person at the center of it all. And it's not just about anger or discipline. The maid reveals that there was a pattern, a calculated method to how staff were treated, how their loyalties were tested, how emotions were manipulated. There were favorites, and there were targets. There were days when the house felt like a well-oiled machine, perfectly in sync, and other days when it felt like a battlefield. You might be wondering, how does someone maintain such a dual existence? Publicly charming, privately intimidating. The answer, the maid says, is meticulous planning, careful observation, and a level of awareness that allowed her to control the environment without ever seeming overtly threatening. Every word, every gesture, every smile was part of a larger strategy to ensure compliance, to maintain dominance, and to keep the public image untarnished. It was, she recalls, a performance in itself, a performance where everyone else had to follow the script perfectly or risk being cast aside. The stories she shares are not just anecdotal, they are revealing. There are moments that shock, moments that amuse, and moments that leave you questioning how someone could reconcile such contradictions. One day, a simple cup of coffee spilled, and it led to what she describes as a full-blown crisis. Another day, A minor scheduling oversight spiraled into hours of tense meetings, apologies, and whispered reprimands. The maid's account shows a world where perfection was demanded in the most trivial of tasks, yet the reasoning behind it often made no sense. It was a paradox. Staff were expected to anticipate every need, predict every move, and yet they were never allowed to make a single mistake without consequence. It was exhausting. It was confounding. And it was only one layer of the experience she endured. Humor, surprisingly, exists in these stories as well. Dark humor, absurd humor. The maid recounts moments when the demands were so unreasonable, so detached from reality, that all she could do was laugh quietly to herself. She compares some of the instructions to something out of a movie, arranging flowers by color, scent, and height to exacting specifications, ensuring certain items were never seen together in public, navigating complex schedules with impossible timing. And yet, while funny in retrospect, these moments were stressful at the time, because the consequences for failing to meet expectations were real and immediate. It was a constant tension between the ridiculous and the terrifying, a tension that only those inside could truly understand. What will truly shock viewers, however, is not just the strictness or the demands, it's the depth of manipulation. The maid describes how people were played against each other, how fear was used as a tool, and how loyalty was both demanded and weaponized. Staff learned to monitor each other, to anticipate moods, to adjust their own behavior constantly. It was like living in a high-stakes game where losing was not optional, and where the rules were often invisible until it was too late. And through it all, the figure at the center maintained an image of grace, poise, and charm to the outside world. A world that had no idea what really went on behind those gilded doors. This contrast between public admiration and private fear forms the backbone of the story, making it both fascinating and unnerving. And here is the critical point. While the maid recounts fear, exhaustion, and anxiety, she also reveals moments of emotional connection, moments of vulnerability. There were times when the public persona cracked, and glimpses of humanity shone through, fleeting, brief, almost accidental. These moments only serve to deepen the intrigue, because they show how complex the person really was. Not entirely evil, not entirely benevolent, but a blend that kept everyone guessing, on edge, and desperate to read the signals correctly. The duality is what makes the story compelling, what makes the insider account invaluable. It challenges everything the public thinks it knows and forces us to reconsider how we perceive those in the spotlight. By now, you're probably asking yourself, if all of this is true, what drove someone to endure it, to work in that environment, and ultimately to speak out? What are the stories that the maid has kept hidden for years, and why is she revealing them now? These questions are exactly why this story matters, and why viewers won't want to look away. Each revelation adds layers of complexity, tension, and intrigue. The contradictions between the polished public image and the tumultuous private reality create a narrative that's impossible to ignore. And just when you think you've started to understand the dynamics at play, the maid drops hints of even more shocking details. Details that she says are almost too incredible to share. Moments that redefine what you thought you knew about Meghan Markle's behavior, about her relationships with staff, and about the unseen pressures of living under constant scrutiny. She teases incidents of betrayal, of secret manipulation, and of events that left staff questioning not just their loyalty, but their own sanity. The tension builds with every word, every recollection. The audience can feel it. The calm before a storm, the quiet tension before a revelation that will leave jaws dropped. Have you ever met someone whose presence immediately makes you feel small, yet somehow drawn to them? Someone whose charm is magnetic, yet beneath the surface, there's tension you can't quite explain? That was Meghan Markle. The Meghan Markle that the world adored, and the one that her staff saw from day one. On the surface, she was everything people expected. Poised, elegant, articulate, almost luminous in her public persona. But the maid, who worked for her for years, insists that behind that glow was a carefully constructed image designed to conceal a very different reality. From the very first day, the contrast between the public and private Meghan was striking. Cameras and flashes captured her smiles, the warmth of her handshake, the effortless charisma she exuded at official events. She could light up a room, command attention, and leave everyone around her enchanted. But as soon as the doors closed behind her, the atmosphere shifted. Staff reported a sense of unease, a tension that never seemed to dissipate. Small gestures, a sharp glance, a subtle sigh, a curt command, were enough to set the tone for the entire household. You could almost feel the air thicken with expectation, anxiety, and silent judgment. The maid remembers walking into that world on her first day, dressed in crisp, professional attire, trying to make a good impression. She had prepared herself for high standards, sure, but nothing could have prepared her for the level of scrutiny she was about to experience. A single mistake in how she arranged items, a misstep in her tone, or even a question asked too innocently could ignite a reaction that left her shaking. And it wasn't just the intensity, it was the unpredictability. One moment, Meghan might be warm and approachable. The next, icy and unyielding. A complete 180 that left staff unsure how to act, how to respond, how to survive. You might wonder, how can someone maintain such a dual persona? How can someone be adored by millions worldwide and yet create an environment of fear behind closed doors? The answer, according to the maid, lies in meticulous control, charm, and a deep understanding of human psychology. Every word, every gesture, every smile was intentional, calculated to maintain a perfect public image while simultaneously keeping the staff on edge. It was like watching a performance unfold, except the stage was a real home, and the stakes were deeply personal. The first few weeks were the hardest. The maid recalls the tiny things, details most people would never notice, that quickly became measures of her loyalty, obedience, and usefulness. The placement of flowers in a room, the folding of towels in a precise pattern, the timing of a simple tea service. These were not mere preferences. They were tests, signals, and sometimes traps. You could never just do your job. You had to anticipate, predict, and guess correctly at every moment what would be acceptable. One wrong move, and the consequences were immediate. Harsh words, cold stares, and a tension that hung like a storm cloud over the staff quarters. And yet, there were moments that seemed almost normal. Meghan could be charming, even playful, in ways that felt genuine. A soft joke, a warm thank you, a fleeting smile. These were the glimpses that made the contrasts so stark, so confusing. You never knew which version of her you were going to get on any given day. It created a constant state of hyper-awareness among the staff. They learned quickly that perception was everything, that their survival depended on reading the slightest cue, the smallest twitch of her expression, and adjusting their behavior accordingly. One of the earliest incidents that stuck with the maid happened over something trivial, a misplaced document, a minor scheduling oversight, something that in any ordinary workplace would be inconsequential. But the reaction was explosive. Doors were slammed, voices raised. Words that seemed cruel in their precision cut deep. The maid describes feeling frozen, unable to process what had just happened, while simultaneously trying to anticipate the next command, the next expectation. She realized in that moment that this was not about the mistake itself. It was about power, control, and the demonstration that no one, not even those closest, was untouchable. It's tempting to think that such intensity would be limited to rare moments, that there would be relief, relaxation, respite. But according to the maid, that was rarely the case. Even ordinary tasks were fraught with tension. Every interaction carried weight. Every look could signal approval or disapproval. You learned quickly to read the room, to anticipate moods, to modify your behavior before any issue arose. And in the rare moments when Meghan allowed a smile, a laugh, or a compliment, it was like a brief reprieve, a reminder of why so many were drawn to her in the first place. Those moments kept people loyal, even as they endured stress, fear, and confusion on a daily basis. There's an almost theatrical quality to it all. The public sees a polished, elegant woman on camera, giving interviews, attending functions, and charming everyone she meets. Behind the scenes, however, there was strategy, calculation, and often cruelty. Staff quickly learned that appearances were everything. If you failed to maintain her preferred image or anticipate her needs, the consequences could ripple through the household. And yet, You also knew that any public misstep on your part could reflect poorly on her. It was a delicate, exhausting balance, a high-stakes performance where the lines between personal and professional blurred completely. The Maid also highlights the contradictions in Meghan's behavior, what seemed impossible to reconcile. She could be generous one day, withholding the next, warm and encouraging one moment, cold and dismissive the next. It wasn't just mood swings. It was a pattern of deliberate contrast that left staff constantly guessing. And it wasn't random. There was strategy in the unpredictability, a method to the chaos. By keeping everyone on edge, she ensured loyalty, obedience, and fear, all while maintaining her flawless public persona. And yet, for all the fear and control, there was an undeniable magnetism. Staff often found themselves torn, frustrated and terrified, but unable to look away. The charm, the elegance, the sophistication, it drew people in, made them want to please, made them want to be close despite the challenges. It's a strange, unsettling duality. Someone can be terrifying and magnetic at the same time, commanding attention not just through power, but through a charisma that makes people complicit in their own anxiety.